very popular during the presidential election and converted many, those on the right to have anti-war, anti-imperialist views. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I'll leave it to these two gentlemen who are involved with that movement. But the one thing I would say is that Ron Paul's a very interesting figure because he has mobilized a lot of people who might not otherwise take an interest in these subjects. One indicator of his effectiveness is his son, you may know, is running for United States Senate in Virginia. In the Republican primaries, Dick Cheney just went out of his way to endorse the opponent and to say that Ron Paul's son was not the most conservative candidate there. That's important. I think it's a sign that they're very worried about that particular movement.
Well, just a couple of things. First, before I forget, I want to, I kidded with Russ about the ribbon because I know Russ and love Russ and love his work. And I just feel, one thing I think is so nice is to have people of different perspectives who do come at things in different ways here. And I think the point Russ made about read, including people you don't agree with or you think you don't agree with or they don't fit your political agenda. We've all got to be breaking out of the box and digging for the truth, wherever it's coming from. So before I forgot, I wanted to echo that. In terms of the movement and Obama, I actually, Russ's point about this complex of powerful oligarchic interests that shaped the Bush election, I'd go further and say that that's exactly how the system works in general, that elections are not the means through which decisions are made by the elites. They're primarily the means through which the elites win our acquiescence and legitimize the system. But that's what voting's about, and Obama played a very particular role. Things did not go according to plan in Iraq and Afghanistan for the Bush regime. They thought they were going to take down 7 countries in 5 years, including Iran. Didn't work out that way. Now I think the game is still afoot. I don't think it's determined if they win, lose, or draw. But it was a big problem. And so the ruling class of this country, and we've covered this in Revolution newspaper, I'd encourage people to or read Andrew Sullivan, a neocon, who put it straight out that the U.S. empire needs rebranding. What better way to do that than to elect Barack Hussein Obama, show his face to a child, and he uses this, to a young man in Pakistan, and they'll think totally differently about the United States. It also had that impact on people in this country. Oh my God, America's finally come back to its roots. What a great day. We can relax. He's taking care of it. And this is beyond whether he's a nice man to have dinner with or not. I mean, I will say, everybody talks about how smart he is, and then, and I've heard people say, but he didn't know what he was getting into. Well, he knew, But I think this is one thing that's had a huge demoralizing impact, but on purpose, to the anti-war movement, and that's why I tried to emphasize rupturing in our thinking with how we look at these things. The other thing I want to say very quickly before Mickey chops my legs off is, stay back, Mickey, get back there. No, he's right though, we need to go quickly, is that I'm not commenting on Ron Paul in particular, but this right-wing movement, there is a huge fascist current in this. Christian fascists and this Tea Party movement is a racist, fascist movement. And I would highly recommend, this is online, people can look at this, go to the section of Bob Avakian's, where he discusses the pyramid of power, where he gets underneath what is the biggest division in the U.S. ruling class since the Civil War. Not me saying that, Newt Gingrich saying that. So I feel we have to build broad mass political resistance, and I do agree with Bill, it's so important. whatever the numbers are for people to be out there in the streets, we need to build this independent of the political establishment and the Republican, Democrat, or, you know, Tea Party debate.
Discouraged, because as we all agree on this point that these individual presidents really don't change history. If you look at any mass movement, it has been the movement itself, a sustained movement over years. You think of civil rights that had all these pitfalls that went up and down, and then you know, Lyndon Johnson's given credit for signing civil rights legislation, which he would have never done if it hadn't been for the movement that forced their hand. It just became so huge. And so it's mass movements that stop everything. And I'll tell you a historical example about war is that when Nixon's reelected, he runs against McGovern, who, you know, he is an anti-war candidate to the max. He, like, you know, that's all he stumps for the whole time. And Nixon, and this is after huge demonstrations, Nixon beats him in a landslide. McGovern only takes one state, Massachusetts. He's like crushed. And everyone's like, how could this happen? With the war, you know, raging and everything, of course the war was starting to go down. Well then, Nixon starts bombing the North again. You know, the movement picks up. 6 months later, after, you know, this anti-war candidate had lost dramatically, 6 months later, there's 500,000 people marching on Washington. 6 months later after that, Nixon's, you know, impeached. So, I mean, it's all about movements. It's all about building broad movements. It's not about the individuals. And I do agree that Obama, there was so much hope, and people really didn't look at the fact that, you know, that he never claimed to be an anti-war candidate, even though he siphoned out most of the anti-war movement, you know, that backed him. So, you know, it's all about grassroots movement. That's what changes history. History is changed by movements.
I can't believe I haven't heard the controlled demolition mentioned, a staged attack on ourselves that, Russell, you're dealing with the CIA. Could you comment on the staged event that's the pretext for all of these wars? And in Jim Wilcott's testimony about the CIA killing JFK, I'd like to give you a copy of his Spey article. He mentions that the plan had been to blame Oswald, who would be linked to Castro, as the pretext for the invasion. Now, the Global Hawk guided thing is mind control, while the Securitas was the Marlon Bush's security company, had access to the tower and all that, but artists and engineers from 9/11 Truth got that all covered. I can't believe that we're going to send people away reinforcing the illusion of hijackers of any kind. They're not Arab, they're not Afghans. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I don't know how to deal with that briefly, so I'm just going to be brief anyway. I'm not an expert on that subject. Some people have criticized me and said, why don't you look more into this subject? It's just a matter of how much time anybody has, and I spent 5 years doing this book. The book is now out, and I'm looking at other subjects. One of the things we've agreed to do with Who on Why is, as we get enough public support, but that does mean funding from ordinary people who agree to give us a small amount every month, is that we will look at all subjects, and we will look at, we have no objection to looking at particular pieces of what happened on September 11, 2001, what happened before that, what happened after that. We're not going to prejudge anything. We're going to look at it and follow fact trails wherever they go. But I think it's unusual even to find any relatively mainstream journalists who say that they are willing to look at those things.
Just to interject, we at Project Censored have long looked at 9/11, and we continue to do so only because it is, as Russ just said, it's an issue that mainstream journalists, corporate journalists don't cover, and the more people do, the more that we can find out the truth about what happened. We have another question here for the panelists about Iran.
We've been doing it in this hall since 2002, in this hall right here, straight up.
You mentioned